This afternoon, following the Human Spaceflight Review Plans Committee's public meetings here in Huntsville, Alabama. Here with us this afternoon is the chairman of the committee, Mr. Norm Augustine. He will make a few brief remarks and then we'll open it up for questions. Mr. Augustine?
Well, thank you and good afternoon. We are here today in Huntsville as part of our committee's deliberations. We have a 90-day project, which is, I believe you know, is assigned to explore the human spaceflight program along with the unmanned activities that accompany it. We're performing this study for the White House and for NASA. We are into the study. We have 34 days left. Today was another very useful day in which we were able to hear about a number of programs, in particular the current NASA program in the manned space flight arena. I've invited two of my colleagues to be with me today, Bo Beamick and Gary Pulliam. Bo is chairing one of the subcommittees of our task group, and Gary is supporting us with the Aerospace Corporation and has performed a huge task in a short period of time. Today we did hear about the status of the ongoing program, some of its technical challenges, a bit about its plans, what's been accomplished to date, and we are moving ahead such that on August 31st we will submit to the printer our final report. And between now and then, we will continue to have other meetings tomorrow at the Cape, next week in Washington. And we have set up a website which we've encouraged comments. We take emails and letters. We appreciate the public input we've received. It's obvious that the public cares a great deal about this subject. And with that, why don't we turn to questions?
That sounds like a good idea. Few points. Please wait for the microphone. State your name and affiliation, and we'll go ahead and start with questions with Liz right here.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Mr. Augustine. Liz Hurley, WAFF News. I have a question for you. Since yesterday in Houston, your investigations going on in Washington, now you come to Huntsville. Are you more convinced than ever that the Constellation program should be replacing the shuttle program, or perhaps are you more confused by what you learned today?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I suspect all 10 of us, given that we've all been in the space business for a long time, came into this with certain beliefs, and I think I speak for all of us that we've changed some of those beliefs as time went on. We really have learned a lot, and we haven't finished learning. We have not drawn any conclusions at all in terms of whether we should continue the shuttle, not continue it, or what we should do. One reason for that is we're precluded by law from doing that the way that we're required to deliberate first in public and then we can make decisions in public. But we still have an open mind and are learning.
What can you tell the people in the Space Flight Center and private contractors as well as the small business owners who are kind of in limbo at this stage? What can you tell them to inspire them? Because they literally don't know the vehicle they've been working on for the past 4 or 5 years and actually never fly.
I've been in their shoes before, and I can share that it's not a pleasant experience. And you know, I regret, I think all of us do, that there's uncertainty that's been introduced here. I think the only thing I can say is that if one puts themselves in the shoes of the leadership of our country as best as any of us can do, we have a new president. We're talking about spending billions of dollars over the next 20 years. And I think it's not unreasonable that the folks in the White House would want to take a look and see if we're on the right path. We may well be on the right path. Certainly in this case, and I think we all believe it who've been in this business, is that don't change unless there's a compelling reason. If there's a compelling reason, then by all means we should change. And we will be making not recommendations but offering options to the president. But what I would say to the people who work so hard here, and I've worked with these people, I first came here when NASA was first formed. In fact, even before that with the Army. And my comment to those very talented people is keep working. We're going to do our very best to do the right thing, as I'm sure the leaders of our country will. And we can all, I think, take great pride in what you're doing and what you will do.
Shall be ready.
We've heard a lot today about the amount of time that you have and you've taken and given the enormity of the projects that you're looking at. Do you have enough time to do this report? Do you feel like there's enough time?
That's a great question, and one that I thought about a lot before I agreed to do this. And the best I can say is that there's no way we're going to do a detailed analysis of costs or of schedules. The one thing we can draw upon is the great body of knowledge at NASA. The people of NASA have been very open with us, supported us just all we could ask and more. The folks at the Aerospace Corporation have been in this business for as long as I can remember, very competent. They have huge databases. And the members of our group have been in this business for a very long time. It's not like we're starting from scratch. I'm sure we've got hundreds of years of experience in the space business collectively, probably many days on orbit among us collectively, many years working in the science community. So I think adding those things together and recognizing that we're going to offer general options, not detailed program plans, I think we can do a respectable job, yes.
Norm, you heard a lot of detailed reports today and a lot of personal pleas. What struck you most today? What stands out the most from what you heard? And then maybe from the other side of that, what would you have liked to have heard that you didn't?
Good question, Mark. That's really hard to say because it was a terrific day and there were a lot of things that we heard. Obviously, hearing more of the detail of the Constellation program stands out in my mind. I'm an engineer, an aerospace engineer. I like that kind of thing. So that, to me, that's exciting. But I think I have to confess, and I speak only for myself, I haven't talked to my colleagues about this question, but the individual who read the cards with comments from the young people, that struck me a lot. And for those of you that didn't hear that, these were comments made by young people, I think around 20 years old, he said, talking about why they were interested in space and what they hoped would come out of America's space program. And they kind of were writing, I think, what they hoped we might say on the first line in our report. And it was very inspiring, to say the least. The second part of your question, what might we like to have heard that we didn't hear? We would like to have heard that Marshall just received a message from OMB that the budget had been doubled, but that's the best I can do.
Hi, Jay Reeves. I'm with the Associated Press. I think I'm too close to it. I know you can't say what you're going to recommend at this point, but as you see it at this point, what are the panel's options? What are some things that you could do? Say, let's forget about Constellation, continue the space shuttle indefinitely. Let's forget about Constellation, do something else completely. Could you explain where you are with that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. There are a lot of moving parts to this this equation, a lot of variables, I guess I should say, but let me touch on a few of them that are issues that we need to address. But in the way of background, I should say we have been given a chance to take a fresh look to address the human spaceflight program and the robotic program that accompanies it rather broadly. So aside from some general comments about how one might execute programs, some of the specific decisions that have to be made include, do you shut the shuttle down after 7 more flights? Do you fly them out on the schedule that's now planned? Do you continue it beyond that period of time? Do you shut Space Station down early in 2016 is the current plan? Do you extend it? How long do you extend it? What do you do with it if you extend it? What are the cost implications of doing those two things on the Constellation program if there's no more money? But if there is more money in the budget, then that opens a lot of new avenues. That's certainly a possibility, I think. There are also issues about what do you do with Constellation? What do you do with commercial launch vehicles? How do you man-rate commercial launch vehicles if you do? Do you address fuel transfer in space? What destinations are of interest? the moon, Mars, Phobos, Deimos, L1, near-Earth objects. If you go to Mars, should you go to the moon first, or should you go straight to Mars? Well, that's a few examples, and I could go on, but those are the sorts of decisions we're wrestling with. And I shouldn't say even decisions. They're decisions in the sense that we've got to provide options. And obviously, we can't provide an infinite number of options. So my hope is we'll get down to a handful of reasonable options.
Jay, do you have a follow-up? Better.
You got a letter from Michael Griffin this morning, and you heard, I think, from Steve Cook some of the him expressing his answer to some of the criticism that has been leveled toward Constellation and Aries. And I don't know if you do odds at this point, but if you were to say, let's go ahead with Constellation and use the Aries architecture, would you anticipate recommending changes in what they're doing at this point, or give them a full speed ahead? How does that work?
Well, we did meet with Mike this morning, and I certainly wouldn't try to speak for Mike. Mike and I have been friends for many years. I have great respect for him. He shared his views with us. We wanted to hear some of his experience. He was here when many of these decisions were made, and this is a complex subject, and so we're trying to gather as much information as we can. We've had inputs from, I think, most every administrator, going back to Jim Beggs, has written me a letter, at least, with some comments. And in terms of the second part of your question, we really have been given no instruction on the magnitude of change that we might offer in the proposals. Certainly one proposal will be don't change anything. That's the baseline plan. And others could go all the way, I suppose, from modifying Constellation to even not doing Constellation. But coming back to a question that was asked earlier, we have neither the expertise nor the time to get into detailed changes in the program. So whatever we do will be at the macro level. We will not be in the tweaking business.
I have a couple more questions, Mr. Augustine. Very quickly, Facebook, Twitter, my phone is at warp speed receiving all of these things. It's amazing. Have you gotten a chance to look at some of those that this committee is receiving? Some of the comments, some of the concerns, some of the suggestions. How many are you getting, and are any of them valid?
Great question. We are on Facebook. We have our own website. We have our own Twitter following. We receive emails, snail mail, and everything else. Lots of phone calls. My secretary, and of course all of us have other responsibilities in addition to this. My secretary told me about 10 days ago that she had just received the 1,000th email I've received, and those aren't ones that are going through our website. I've read all 1,000 of those. I've responded, I think, to most of them, sometimes very briefly, but the website, every one that comes in is being read. They're being compiled, and we're going through them. We received lots of comments that are very valuable to us. Some are just the inspiring kind of comments that I alluded to by young people. Some are of a technical nature. Like one that comes to mind is somebody pointed out some possible problems in the calculations that have to do with the ignition times of a rescue vehicle. One of the frustrating things, though, is that the span of the input is almost hard to describe. But the only thing you can say is there are a lot of people who care. They care a lot, but they don't agree with each other. Last week I opened two emails, one right after the other. The first email said that why are we wasting any money on any part of the space program? We have people with cancer, we have children without enough to eat, we have 2 wars going on, we have an economy in collapse, and we shouldn't be spending a penny on the space program. Next email came in, said I was a youth that graduated from college at about the time of the Apollo program. I changed my whole life plan to go into engineering. I've had the most rewarding career. I'm raising my children. I've received all these awards for contributing to our country, and don't let this stop. It's the greatest thing that ever happened, and that's the span of what we're getting. We get more of the former than the latter, but we get plenty of the latter too, and I suppose that's the character of the business.
Last question. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you on a teleconference about the status of Aries 1X. It's now been pushed to Halloween. With your timing that's going on, what is the rationale if you are not convinced that the Constellation program will go forward? What's the rationale for actually going ahead and flying Aries 1X?
The Office of the President, really it was, I think, the Office of Science and Technology, OSTP, in the President's office, gave the instructions, and I think correctly, that while we conducted our review, nothing should be stopped that is on the path toward carrying out the programs that are underway. And so indeed, I think that's a good plan. Our idea is not to hold up the program. So by all means, whatever's being done should be done. If that includes a test, which of course it does, that's good. It's a coincidence that it comes out at almost the day that we submit our report, just as it's coincidence this is the 40th anniversary of the landing on the moon, and just as it's a coincidence, and I stand to be corrected here, but I think that the day we submit our report is something like the closest Mars ever comes to the Earth in 60,000 years or something, and we're aware of those things too. But those things, by and large, are coincidences, and I think they should continue right ahead, and let's all hope it's a great success.
Further questions, Mr. Augustine? Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for being here with us today. Concludes our briefing.
Okay, thank you all very much for your interest.